Well, this is definitely a fascinating development in the Bitcoin world. And a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts are convinced that this latest news is what's going to set Bitcoin on fire and push it to a new all-time high. I think this is worth further analysis. Now, while this is great news for Bitcoin investors, I think the bigger news might be coming soon. Let's dig into this, y'all. What's up, y'all? It's John Master Lee here. I tell you, even though life these days has gotten to be boring as hell being locked up at home, I mean, there's only so much Netflix and video games you can digest before your brain turns to jelly. But the one thing that has been exciting in the last couple of months is what's been going on in the investment world, in particular with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been on a tear this year. And if you happen to have bought Bitcoin in the last 2 years on a dip, well, you're probably doing pretty darn good right now. That being said, there are a lot of people who bought Bitcoin when it was at an all-time high, around $20-some thousand per Bitcoin. And then we saw a really scary drop that kept going down from 10,000 to 5,000 until it settled around 3,000 to 4,000 some. Well, it's bounced back tremendously since then, and this was around 2008. Just this year, Bitcoin has more than doubled in value, and if you happen to have bought it around $5,000, well, you're doing pretty good today. But with this latest news that's coming out, a lot of Bitcoin holders are convinced that this could push it past around $12,000, where it's kind of been hovering now for all of August. You see, it's just been announced that Pornhub has added both Bitcoin and Litecoin as payment options. It really wasn't big news. It's not like Pornhub put out a press release for this. It was something that they just put out via Twitter, and a lot of people jumped all over it. Now, considering that Pornhub is probably the #1 brand name in the adult entertainment business, people think that must mean huge money. I mean, we're talking billions upon billions of dollars here for the whole industry. But let's break this down, because I think if you start to really dig into the details, this might be just a blip in terms of the overall impact that it will have on Bitcoin. So let's dig into this news announcement to begin with. So Pornhub is accepting these two types of cryptocurrencies for payments. And people typically pay for stuff for Pornhub for their premium service, like a monthly subscription. Now, this isn't the first time that Pornhub has actually accepted cryptocurrency. Back around 2018, they did accept the Verge cryptocurrency, but that really didn't move the needle too much. Now, Pornhub has about 130-some million visitors every single month, which is about a third of the entire US population. So yeah, there is a sizable audience here. But do we think that just because Pornhub is offering this option that Bitcoin is suddenly light on fire and go up by 10, 20, 30, 100%? Well, let's take a look at what's been going on with Bitcoin just this year in 2020, where we saw this tremendous growth from about $5,000 to about $12,000 right now. Now, a number of different factors has caused Bitcoin to go up this much, so it's pretty understandable. The first one being the U.S. economy is in a really interesting state. Interest rates are an all-time low. It's kind of a pointless thing to just keep money in a savings account when interest rates are pretty much bearing almost nothing. And when you factor in inflation, well, you might as well put it into something. And yes, more than ever, the younger generation is using very simple apps and easy ways of buying stocks via something like Robinhood, and also buying Bitcoin. It's never been easier to buy Bitcoin. And so that's one of the reasons why Bitcoin continues to be a favorite investment vehicle for the millennial generation, despite the fact that it is still a very risky proposition. But hey, with American dollars being devalued like this and our economy's in the crapper, hey, why not take a chance and hope that your investments might double? In this day and age, that just sounds like a dream come true. Now, the other thing that has caused a pretty big shift in interest in Bitcoin has been the halving that occurred earlier this year as well. This is the scenario where the amount of Bitcoin that is produced is pretty much cut in half. And this is an ongoing thing until eventually there will be no more Bitcoin produced. Well, ever since then, that's caused a lot of interest in Bitcoin. And typically in the past, when there is a halving scenario, the price of Bitcoin does go up. Not right away, but over the course of the year, it does go up. Now, the halving itself might have caught a lot of attention, but it's really whose attention has been caught that's the most interesting. You see, There's been a record number of institutional investors that have come into Bitcoin this past year. And these are big investment funds who are pouring not just $1 million to $2 million, but we're talking 10 million plus to hundreds of millions of dollars. And in fact, some companies like MicroStrategy, who are sitting on a lot of cash reserve, have decided that they will put it into something like Bitcoin as a way to hedge against the devalued US dollar and the fact that there is no savings to be made when you put it away in a bank. Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I can understand why Bitcoin has more than doubled this year. Now, this is absolutely amazing, brought in a lot of new investors, buying them in bigger and bigger chunks, but those are many different big things have happened all around this year to be able to push Bitcoin up that far. Now, do we think that Pornhub offering the ability to buy, porn is going to result in a similar doubling scenario? Let's dig into this. There's been very little information around how well Pornhub is actually doing as a company. In other words, what is its total revenue? And that's mainly because Pornhub itself doesn't disclose this information because it's part of a larger company called MindGeek. And MindGeek actually has a huge number of investments in different types of porn sites. So Pornhub is not just its only business. The one thing that I did find was around 2015, Pornhub seems to disclose that it was making about $500 million in revenue, with a small percentage of that from ads and the rest of it, I would assume, from their subscription business. Now, in the last 5 years, the internet has absolutely exploded, so I can only imagine how the revenues today is multiple times more than that, potentially even billions at this point. But we're talking all of Pornhub's business, everything. So the question is, what percentage of that revenue is generated via the cryptocurrencies that they offered? Well, we do have one bit of interesting information here, which is that Pornhub actually has a number of actors that work for them, well, as contractors, a little bit like Uber, where these entertainers can earn money from Pornhub if they're able to bring subscription dollars in. And so far, from what we've seen from that, about 10% of these adult entertainers opted to get paid in cryptocurrency versus cash. So my sense is if you were to use that as a barometer, you could probably estimate that maybe about 10% of the people who pay for a subscription is paying via cryptocurrency. And consider this is a pretty unknown cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, maybe could double that. If I were to take a fancy guess, I would say maybe 20% on a high end of all revenue generated could be from cryptocurrency, which means that it's probably about a couple $100 million of money that will be transferred from porn lovers to Pornhub via Bitcoin. Now, is that enough to move the needle in a significant way? Well, considering the price of Bitcoin today, the overall market size of Bitcoin is topping out mostly around $250 billion. So if you're talking about $200 million being added into the pot, we're talking about a difference in value bump here of less than 1%, a decimal point before that 1%. So in other words, it's going to be pretty insignificant. And so far today, if you take a look at Bitcoin's price is actually down since this announcement. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. But I think what will make a big difference here is the signaling. And we've seen this happen with institutional investors as well. All it took was for one or two of the biggest investment firms out there, the biggest funds, to jump on cryptocurrency. And what that did was create a cascade effect of other investment funds who wanted to put money in as well. Bitcoin has reached the point where, even though it's a risky proposition, they believe that there is long-term value in holding on to Bitcoin. And that's how investment funds typically work. They're not there to short-term flip. When you have hundreds of millions of dollars that you are investing, you have to take a look at being able to put something into any investment vehicle that stays there for a while, because it's very difficult to move that amount of cash in and out of a lot of different investments very quickly. So that signal from a couple of huge investors resulted in a bunch more investors jumping on board, and that's when you start to see a significant bump. I think that will happen with Pornhub as well. Not just opening the doors for a bunch of other adult entertainment sites out there that will eventually adopt Bitcoin in a more aggressive way, but I think for a lot of other online businesses that offer subscription services. And this could venture into type of services that may not just be purely for adult entertainment, entertainment. It could be something like OnlyFans as an example. Could be even something like Tinder as an example. Ultimately, I think using Bitcoin for any sort of subscription service is a really great idea because, I think of Bitcoin a lot like chips that you see in Las Vegas. Chips where people are gambling and they don't think of it as money anymore. So with Bitcoin, I think once it gets converted to that and it's being drawn out of your Bitcoin account, people who are on subscriptions, my assumption is will stay subscribed longer just because it's out of mind, out of sight. So that's my take, you all. I think it's great news. I don't subscribe to Pornhub, so I can't say for certain whether or not this is something I would ever do. But I might go through the exercise, because research. I just want to see. Yeah, babe. It's research. I want to find out how easy it is to do because I think that is honestly the biggest entry to barrier. Not whether or not a service offers it, but how easy they make it to use your Bitcoin to sign up. And that's one reason, online transactions have really taken off. Today, it's just so easy with pressing one button to buy stock. And not even pressing a button. You can literally just scan your face and boom, money's deducted from your account and you just bought something. When Bitcoin reaches that point, where it's that easy to buy something, then I think you're going to have a huge bump in the value of Bitcoin. All right, y'all. That's all for today. Peace out.